It's the Brad and John Show.
The Brad and John Show for April 1st. It's April Fool's Day. This is 2025. This is B Block, which will be our last block today. Now, John, right off the get-go, I have to ask you a question. Now, you say I'm the one that knows all the things on elections, which is not necessarily true. But I think here's an interesting question. Top of the hour newscast. Did you by any chance hear it on our station here?
Yeah, I think I did.
There are elections going on around the country. Now, isn't the presidential election, isn't it set up that when we have the generals and the primaries, isn't that the first Tuesday of the month? Isn't that the way it's supposed to be?
Yeah, it's usually the first Tuesday after the first Monday. So this would technically be the first Tuesday. But in Missouri, at least, we have it after the first Tuesday after the first Monday.
So they don't have that like in Florida because they're having elections in a lot of places around the country today.
Yeah, it might just be. I mean, municipalities can set their own election date, but in Missouri, it's generally the first Tuesday after the first Monday in any given month.
So in other words, it can never be the first. It can have the earliest it can be in Missouri is the second.
Correct. It would be the 2nd through the 8th.
Okay, and obviously they don't have that in other states because, like I said, the big thing is if you know what's going on with the U.S. House race, that's why Trump pulled back the nomination for the ambassador to the United Nations because of the fact that he's afraid that some of these elections may go sideways and the Democrats may end up taking control of the House of Representatives. So that's the thing going on down in Florida, and also isn't it Wisconsin as well too? Wasn't that was the big controversy? That was Musk up in Wisconsin giving away the $1 million checks. Did you see that?
Yeah, I heard something about this from a liberal friend of mine yesterday. I don't follow that, but I know we have at least one listener to the show who is following Wisconsin elections. Yeah, there's some big Supreme Court to do up there.
Yeah, and we don't have that in the state of Missouri. We don't have elections for Supreme Court judges, but in Wisconsin they do. Okay, Paulina Luna. Did you by any chance look her up yet? Did you see her picture?
No.
You're not going to look her up?
Okay, if you want me to, I will look her up. And are you using her correct name this time?
Anna, A-N-N-A, Paulina.
Okay, she's loading right now.
P-A-U-L-I-N-I-A.
Oh, yeah, look at that. She's got the schoolgirl thing. In the lead picture here that I see, she's doing the schoolgirl, she's got like a tie on.
Yes.
She's doing like a tie gimmick with like a 3-piece suit cosplay type thing.
Very attractive woman.
That's cute. And she's from Florida?
Yes, House of Representatives. I believe she's
from
Florida.
And where is she from in Florida?
Let me look here. Yeah, she's Florida. I don't know exactly where she's from in Florida, but the big news is she's resigning from the House Freedom Caucus. Now, those of you who've listened to the station before, I have a problem with this. I have a problem with all caucuses. I have a problem with the Black Congressional Caucus, the Freedom Caucus, and I do quite honestly have a problem with this crazy, the Freedom Caucus, which Bill Eigel was behind. I guess maybe my problem is that I don't think that you divide what's the old saying, divide and conquer. I don't think that's the case in politics. I think in politics, you don't divide and conquer, you unite and conquer. Does that make any sense?
Divide and conquer means what you do to your enemies. So it's a misuse of it there. But what you're saying is you don't intentionally fractionalize and marginalize your own side.
Well, they do divide. They divide. I mean, like, for example, I was listening to 97.1 yesterday. They're talking about the IP, the amendment. What is it?
Initiative petition changes.
Petition
Everybody
thing.
uses the word reform. Let's stop using reform. Let's say changes.
Right. Okay. Changes. Okay. Why didn't that pass? Because of the fact that it was the conservative caucus said it wasn't conservative enough. Okay. I make fun of the fact that you and I, matter of fact, I coined this phrase one day on the air, where I had my ill-fated last meeting I ever had with Tracy, Ellis, and her husband. And her husband looked at me and he said, this is before they actually had their radio stations. He says, we don't trust radio people. Now, what's problematic to me is Tracy and Rick put themselves up as Christians. Do you think Jesus, once upon a time, said, I don't trust that Mary Magdalene because she's a prostitute. I don't trust this guy because he's got leprosy. Okay, get what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. You're saying that it's hypocritical of them.
It's hypocritical. And that's why one morning I came up with, because if you listen to Tracy's station, 93.3 and whatever, all the other 104.3 or whatever, all the other different permutations of it are, all they talk about is rhino, 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 rhino. You don't listen to rhino radio. Don't listen to rhino radio. So one morning I came up on the air and I called her a kino, which is Christian in name only. Okay? That's my point with this. You know the backstory with this Representative Luna, why she is getting out of the conservative caucus?
No, what happened?
She wanted essentially a special, I don't call it dispensation, whatever you call it, in the House rules that if you're a pregnant woman, you can vote by proxy. The idea being is that you don't have to physically be present. We had this when we went through the COVID thing, where you could vote by proxy. You didn't have to actually be sitting in the Senate or in the House of Representatives. And I think she points out that there's 17 women in the United States Congress who are of childbearing age and who may be having kids. And her point being is there should be a special dispensation for women who have pregnancies, who can't physically make it to the U.S. House of Representatives. Maybe they're in labor. Maybe sometimes you have women who have complications with their birth and they have to go on bed rest for a month or something like that. I mean, you probably are familiar with people. I've had friends of mine in the past that have had that situation. And she's upset because the conservative caucus says, no exceptions. Don't you think that's a little bit interesting? The conservative caucus?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, and so I guess the argument against what she's saying is that you need to get your caucus or your pregnant self onto the floor of the House to vote like everybody else.
Right.
And maybe the mainline argument is that if we allow an exception for pregnant people, then we'll allow an exception for somebody who's got a headache or a migraine.
Right. Her thing was it would be a special exception for new parents in the House to vote remotely for 12 weeks around the baby's birth. Now, it says new parents. It doesn't necessarily say the woman. I guess that could be like what they call it with guys take it. Is that pregnancy leave or whatever? What do you call that? What is their term for that?
It's paternity leave.
Paternity leave. Okay. So She's like, okay, I'm done with you guys. And see, this is my whole point is that how conservative can you be? I mean, to the point where Bill Eigel calls himself a conservative, but he's not. He's not a conservative because
why is that, Brad?
Well, because of the fact that he does things that are not necessarily conservative.
Okay, and what would be a few good examples of that?
Okay, once again, it's shades of gray.
Once again,
it's shades of gray, John. Shades of gray. It's not black or it's not white. He's not black. He's not white. I'm not talking about his racial makeup.
Sure. So what are some examples of things he's done that aren't really conservative?
Well, to the point where I think that if one point in time, if you say that Mike Kehoe's a bad guy, and then all of a sudden you say he's a good guy, I think he's not being conservative because
but so policy-wise, what has Bill Eigel done that you wouldn't consider conservative?
The fact that, and I brought this up before, they yell and scream and cry about, the story was we had our first abortion in St. Louis last week. Oh, my God, we have abortions in St. Louis. Terrible thing. But yet, if they would have passed initiative reform and modified the law about the constitutional way you get things into the Missouri Constitution, that would have never happened. There would not be abortions in the state of Missouri, but yet it was a fight because it was like, you're not conservative enough. No, I'm more conservative than you. It's that goofy thing. And it's the whole thing is to the point where when I hear people that say, well, I'm very conservative, I think to myself, no, you're not, because of the fact that it's just like, what was the story we talked about that remember you sort of made fun of me? Who's the new senator out in St. Charles County, the guy that took over for
Adam Schnelting?
Yeah, Adam Schnelting. He's trying to pass some goofy law about the fact that, well, you shouldn't have people in the fast lane sitting there in the fast lane. They should move over to the right. Okay, so what he's essentially admitting is that if you're saying that, you're admitting you're a lawbreaker because the speed limit says, let's say that stretch between out west of Forestdale out to like Kingdom City, okay, when they're going down to the House of Representatives in Jefferson City, okay? The speed limit says 70 miles an hour. So at 71, are you still within the law, John?
Yeah, because I think you get 5 miles per hour leeway, right?
No, you don't. You get nothing. You get zero tolerance.
And your point here, instead of meandering, your point here is that by Adam Schnelting saying that putsy drivers shouldn't clog up the fast lane, he's not being conservative, is what you're saying.
He's not obeying the law. Because of the fact that if there's somebody sitting in the fast lane, and trust me, this has been my case, unfortunately, I'm not a fast driver, but occasionally, especially when I go on 44, there are times when you're going up the hills, if you're going out there between Eureka and Pacific, you get behind the tractor trailers, they're doing 35 miles an hour because they can't make it up the hill. You have to get in the left lane. You got some knucklehead coming up behind you at like 95 miles an hour, flashing his lights at you because you're doing 75 trying to pass a slow truck, and to the point where it's like, okay. See, just like you said, I got in this situation years ago with the argument with Dick Stratman, the mayor of Washington, because of the fact.
Did he ever have any sort of an issue with a stop sign?
That was the whole deal.
What happened?
You're making fun of me. I've told this story before. He was
He
was Mr. Red Light Camera, and my office was right there in the corner of Stafford and West Fifth. And I said,
could you ever look out your window and see him and see traffic at the stop sign?
Well, he told me one day that stop signs don't necessarily mean stop. And I said, what? And he says, well, when I come up to an intersection, if I don't see anybody going at the crossways, going the cross direction, I don't stop. And I'm going like, no, hold on a minute now. I think if you read Missouri state law, it says that you come to a complete stop at a stop sign, whether or not there's anybody to the left or the right of you on an intersecting street, right? So in other words, he calls himself conservative, but he's liberal when it comes to interpreting stop sign law. Adam Schnelting calls himself conservative, but he's liberal when it comes to saying, hey, if I want to drive 85 miles an hour, stay out of the damn left lane, right?
Yeah, I think, and also part of Schnelting's bill was other than the fast lane thing to keep old people from clogging up the fast lane, he also wanted to make stop signs what he called stoptional, which means that if you have nobody within 100 feet of a stop sign, then you can just roll through it. So they would officially be declared stoptional. And he couldn't use 200 feet. Excuse me, he couldn't use 200 yards because he was one of the 12 people that listened to the Mike Elam podcast from Westplex Chamber. 11 of them were bots. But 12 people listened, and they heard a story about Mike Elam swimming 200 yards from a boat. Because if you're within 200 yards, you could be taken over by the undertow. And, that's the way some people see St. Louis City.
For non-regular listeners of the show, this is John making fun of Brad. This is John's...
It's April Fool's Day, Brad. One day a year, I have to poke fun at you.
Oh, yeah, one day a year. See,
so you're right about the fast lane, though, Brad. If you're exceeding the speed limit, you're exceeding the speed limit.
Right, and there's no gray about that. Matter of fact, it's to the point where, but yet they want to make exceptions to the rule. That's the whole thing. I've said this before. I'll say that again. There's a famous general I think he's retired now or something like that. And I heard this years ago, that the average person, when you're out on your daily duties, whatever you're doing, going to work or going to Schnucks or whatever you're doing, you break between 5 and 10 laws a day. The average person. Now, the crazy thing about that is to the point where most people would say, well, I don't do that. I don't break any laws. I've told this stupid story. The lady who used to work for me, we had lunch one day, and she accused me of being a rule breaker. I'm a terrible person.
And then you were headed to a meeting, and what happened, Brad?
She made an illegal left turn. She ran a red light. She drove 65 miles an hour in a 40 zone, and then made an illegal left turn into a parking lot where we're going. And I said to her, hey, remember that conversation we had at lunch about how you abide by all the laws and you're a good Christian and you don't violate any of the laws? I go, you want me to tell you the 3 or 4 violations just committed in the last 5 minutes? And she went, well, but that's just traffic law. Okay? Once again, you just say, like, if your neighbor does something bad to your house or does something bad to you, is that allow you to set fire to his house? Well, it was just a little fire. You know what I mean? He said something bad to me. I set his house on fire. So what difference does it make? Get what I'm saying, John?
I do, and I think so. Let's get back to your original point, which is Annie Palooza and her idea that pregnant women should be, or women who I guess just gave birth, should be able to cast ballots by proxy. If I were a feminist, pardon the expression, or perish the thought, I should say, I think what you're doing is you're discriminating. I don't know if she ever makes this argument, but you're discriminating against women running for office, because if a gal gets pregnant and then if I'm running against that woman, I say, hey, she's a woman, and if she gets pregnant, imagine she wouldn't be able to vote. I promise to be there for 100% of the votes because I will never get pregnant. So I think you're discriminating against women. And in fact, this is something that has held women down. It's part of the glass ceiling in corporate America. Because, 20 years ago, you could ask abroad, hey, you're 27, you haven't had any kids yet, and your eggs are still fresh. Any chance you're going to have a kid and ruin our whole corporate schedule for 3 months at a time? But now you can't ask a chick that.
Well, but my point being is the conservatives, for the most part, are conservatives. Hey, get married, have kids, have a family, go to church. Isn't that what they're saying? Essentially saying is
Yeah, that's generally the argument. So you're saying that they're being hypocritical there because they should provide women the option of, hey, you got a little preeclampsia? Don't come and vote. Hey, you're feeling a little gross and disgusting and you haven't done your hair properly? Don't come to the floor of the House.
Well, I'm not saying that, but the first one I am. I see, once again, it's the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy of...
Once again, it's the hypocrisy.
Okay, John. Guess what?
It is 7:40 almost.
And you know what? This is
What's that?
First April 1st in the history of me being in the radio business where I didn't pull a prank. How's that?
No, are you serious?
Yeah.
Now you have something important later today, so I'm sure if it involves attorneys or business, it'll be a giant prank, right?
No, it won't be a giant prank. It won't be any kind of a prank whatsoever. I have some place I have to be, and I have to scoot out of here a little early this morning. So this is going to be our last live segment. We'll play a pre-recorded segment. Tomorrow, in segment B, I want to start with an interesting article that was in The Hill yesterday. And I'll just give the headlines, and you can prepare for this tomorrow. Shouted questions at Trump have consequences. New action by White House.
Ooh, I love it. I hope there's something punitive going on there.
No, actually, it's actually a pretty interesting story. Okay, say goodbye, John.
Happy April Fools. Bye, Brad.
Talk to you tomorrow.